is being recorded. Start video.
Record progress.
All right, let's start. We'll let everyone get on as they come. Nice to see everyone on the screen and everyone in person. Everybody who is local is, of course, welcome to join us in person. You get a big prize. I don't know what it is.
Not yet.
We'll figure something out. Okay, next week obviously is Shavuos. So next week, everyone's invited to all night learning. There's, I think, 4 fascinating topics, 2 by me, 2 by Rabbi Sher. Take us through the night. So everyone's welcome then, and I guess we'll pick up at some point. I'm not sure this Tuesday right after Shavuos will be up, but maybe the week after that. Tonight's topic, all right, the drive to acquit in death penalty cases, right? That is a phenomenon that we will hopefully will show you in the halacha, that there are numerous examples. We have one in the Gemara. At least the theory is in the Gemara, the idea is in the Gemara. There are many examples throughout Sanhedrin. So I want to kind of go through that and then try and figure out, right, why should that be, right? Why is it that we look to acquit people? But let's, as we always do, let's start with the Gemara and then we'll kind of sink our teeth into. So this is a Gemara in, you look at the source page, you have the top is Rosh Hashanah Daf Chaf Hey. The context of this Gemara is, right, the Sanhedrin or the Beis Din that sees the new moon. So part of them become the judges, part of them become witnesses, right? And they form, their triumvirate and they declare the new moon and everybody is happy. But what's happening, what the Gemara picks up on is at that point, the witnesses become the judges, right? First they were witnesses, they saw it, and then they become judges, right? That in our Gemara terminology is called Eid Na'aseh Dayan, that the witness, the aid, becomes a Dayan, becomes a judge. So that's where we pick up on the very top of the page, right, where the Gemara says as follows: L'meimra, right, that is to say, De'ed Na'aseh Dayan, that a witness can become a judge, because that's essentially what happened in the case with the sanctification of, with the new moon, with Kiddush HaChodesh. And then the Gemara says, Lema Masnisin Delok Rabbi Akiva. Maybe our Mishnah is not like Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva now ostensibly believes that an aid will not become a judge, right? Aid will not become a dayan. Titania gives us a brisa. This brisa is about Sanhedrin that witnesses a murder, right? So Sanhedrin shiro echad shahar against hanefesh. They literally witnessed the murder. Okay. Now you jump to the next source. It is a direct continuation. It just we're now turning the page on our source sheet. Miktsasa na'asu edim umiktasu na'asu dayanim. Right, so part of the Sanhedrin become witnesses, part of them become judges. Divrei Rabbi Tarfon. So says Rabbi Tarfon. Rabbi Tarfon clearly believes that what? A witness can become a judge. Eid na'aseh dayan. Rabbi Akiva Omer Kulan Na'asin Eidin, Ve'en Eid Na'aseh Dayan. The entire Sanhedrin become witnesses, and what do they have to do? They have to find another court and go testify, right? That's maybe demeaning, but that we can get over. That's life. They have to find another court. They will testify before that court, but not a single member of the Sanhedrin can become judges, because Eid lo na'aseh dayan. So far, this has nothing to do with our topic. But here's where we come. Here is our transition to our topic. The Gemara says, no, afilu tema Rabbi Akiva, that even we can maintain that our Gemara is Rabbi Akiva, that part of the Beis Din that saw the new moon can flip to become Dayanim. And they can, right? Some can testify, some can be a Beis Din. The witnesses can become judges. How does that then square with Rabbi Akiva saying in a capital case they cannot do that? How can it be that Rabbi Akiva will agree to the former case, but he maintains that in the capital case an aid does not become a dayan? And for that the Gemara says afilu tema Rabbi Akiva. Right? We could even say the first source is Rabbi Akiva, with the sanctification of the month. Ad kan lo ka'amar Rabbi Akiva hasam ela b'dina nefashos. Rabbi Akiva only says it when it comes to capital cases. Dine nefashos are laws of the soul, life and death. That's how the Gemara calls life and death. Capital cases where we're putting somebody to death. Why would a capital case now be different, right? Why would you say in a regular case, knock yourself out, witness can become a judge, but in a capital case, you cannot? Says the Gemara, the Rachmana Amar v'shaftu ha'eda v'hitzilu ha'eda, that the Eda judges and the Eda must save. Right? That there's an emphasis on saving the person in the Chumash. And now comes v'cheban dechazyu dekatel nafsha. Once these people saw him murder, lo matzu chazu lezechusa, they can't find any merit for him because they literally watched him murder somebody, right? If you become a judge in a case where you witnessed the murder, probably your inclination is going to be to convict. That's just, you saw the guy kill somebody. Therefore, Rabbi Akiva in the death penalty case says the witnesses cannot become because it will impinge on their ability to be lenient and to find a merit for this murder. But in the case of capital punishment, where that is not consideration, so then we don't care. A witness can become a dayan. Okay, what is wrong with that Gemara and that idea? If you're on Zoom, unmute yourself. If not, we have a cool Jeff provided speaker here. We can all hear you. What is wrong with that Gemara? I think something's very wrong with that Gemara. Just philosophically, there's a problem. Forget halachically, philosophically.
Well, the person's a murderer. We're going to figure out some way to get him off.
Right, meaning they saw him do it. This is not a question of, right? So let's just take a step back. There's no such thing as circumstantial evidence in Beis Din. Okay? I can literally, and the Gemara has this case, I can see you walk into the room with a knife. I can see you walk out of that room with a bloody knife. I can then go in and find a body stabbed on the floor dead. And I know that nobody else went in and nobody else went out. You know what I can't do? Cannot convict you. Okay, but here they saw him do it. There's testimony that he did it. Not only who are the witnesses? Who are the witnesses in this case?
The judge, liable people.
Not only judges, they are the mother of all judges. This is the Sanhedrin. The Sanhedrin saw him do it. What is happening here? Right? That at face value is ridiculous. This is not somebody who, stole a candy bar from a bodega. This is a murderer.
But it's almost as if there's a certain structure to convict a murderer, even if you let murderers go. You're not gonna destroy the structure of witnesses in a court. So he's a lucky guy.
So Barry says that he's a lucky guy because we're not going to destroy the structure, except that in the sanctification in the Kiddush HaChodesh case, the structure of the court does allow for it. This is an exception carved out in capital cases, right?
Right.
And it's mind-numbing, right? It is literally mind-numbing. Now what we're going to do is we're going to try and figure out why this is, right? Why should it be? We trust the people; they are the Sanhedrin. We can't trust the Beis Din. Oh no, forget that. Scratch that. Just kidding. Sorry, I didn't say that out loud. Hide my head in shame. I apologize. But the Sanhedrin, yeah.
It's so obvious that has to be the end. There's no other answer. I don't think.
Okay, so
that's presumptuous.
So Barry thinks that these are the rules, but the question is why they made these rules. Like, why did they make these rules? Let me make this question stronger. So that is used for a number of things. Let me run you through a number of things. I didn't hand out all these source sheets because I don't want it to read too much, but there are 6 other halachos that I'm going to give you that sort of fit this pattern, that I think at the end of the day, we will be scratching our heads. Again, those of you who are blank screens, if you want to turn your screens on so we can all see you, everyone would, I'm sure, would love to see your face, or not. I don't know. I think we all do, but if you don't say anything. Okay, so number 1, this is a Gemara in Sanhedrin Daf Lamed Beis. And it's also codified in the Rambam, right, where it says as follows. So let me just take a step back. How is the Sanhedrin set up? We actually, on our Pesach trip to Israel, Tamara took all of us to the Temple Institute, which is a fascinating. They've recreated the Kalim of the Mishkan. It's actually kind of fascinating. And they have all, they have it as it's laid out. The Sanhedrin is like this, and then they have rows for students. Right, so you have the Sanhedrin, you have the judges, and then there's rows of students. And the Gemara now says that the students are only allowed to speak if they have something that will contribute to acquitting the person charged in a capital case. The students, if a student gets up and says, I think he's guilty, they tell him to sit down and be quiet. And they probably say it like that, not in a different way, because they're the Sanhedrin. Right, so they're nice about it. They're not allowed to speak. You can only speak if you are a Talmud, if you have something that will lead to an acquittal. Okay, that, first of all, why should the Talmudim be allowed to speak at all? You have 70 judges. And if we really care about justice, what should they be allowed to say? Anything they want, right? It seems that we're sacrificing justice in order to acquit this individual. We have Sanhedrin Edom, and they can't testify. Right? This Talmud might actually have a good call. He might have a good reason to right. Again, the Talmidim were not first grade students. Right? Let me make that very clear. They weren't like little yeshiva kids trying to learn. These are bona fide people who are Talmidim. They're students because they're not on the Sanhedrin, but they have their bona fides, right? Why can't they speak? Where is the justice in skewing it one way over the other? Okay, that is number 1. If this Talmud is an acquitting Talmud, they know where they stick them? Up with the judges. Okay, right? These are all in the Rambam. And the Gemara and Sanhedrin. I won't give, if you anyone who wants, I can give you chapter and verse or daf and whatever, but I think it's just smoother if we don't for now. But again, I'm happy to provide the sources for anybody who wants. This one is even more mind-numbing. Okay, Talmud Shahaya Mizake Umes. The Talmud was the student had a reason to acquit, and then he had an aneurysm. Or some other form of death. I don't know how he died. It doesn't really matter how he died, but he died. What do you think the halacha is when a student gets up, says something to acquit, and then he kicks it? Right? What do we do?
We accept it.
No, but what we yes.
You would know.
So he knows where I'm. Jeff knows where I'm going. Jeff said we accept it, but what should it be? Should throw it out. He should go in the right. His opinion should go in the grave with him.
You can't examine.
Right, you can't examine him. He can't reconsider his notions, right? Meaning he might hear something else and he'll change his mind. Says the Gemara, we see it as if he's still alive. He's standing in his place. He's counted among the people who are acquitting. And we don't say, if the guy would have been alive, he would have changed his mind. Or maybe he would have changed his mind. It's very possible he would have changed his mind. Right, so that is number 3. Number 4. Right, this is another fascinating argument. Can witnesses speak? Right, witnesses certainly can speak. Let's rephrase that. What's the role of a witness in court? Right, what's the role of a witness in any court? Not a trick question.
Provide evidence.
Bring out the facts.
Right, you gotta bring out the facts, give your testimony about what you saw, right? Just the facts, please. What can they contribute in another way? Let's say they have some theories, right? Let's say they have some thoughts too. They're not the Sanhedrin, they are not the Talmidim, but they have an opportunity to speak. So now can they say, yes, I saw him do it, but, and then add something that doesn't relate to their testimony per se, right? To giving over of the facts, right? So in an American court, I have no idea what the answer to that question is. That's the truth. I have no idea in an American court whether that works or not. In the Gemara, there is an argument between the Chachamim and Rabbi Yossi Bar Yehuda. Right? The Chachamim say no, right? Because your job is tell me what you saw. I don't really care about what you think. That's irrelevant. You're not a judge. You're not a student. You're a nice person. You're a kosher aide, which means you're a nice, right, ethical, halacha keeping person. Wonderful. But I don't really care beyond that. Your job is to tell me what you saw and nothing else. That actually is a tremendously logical position. That's the intuitive position. Jeff, guess what Rabbi Yossi Bar Yehuda says? You can, but only to exonerate. Right? Again, it's skewed. Right? Meaning either they have a role or they don't have a role. Tell me they're allowed or tell me they're not allowed. But they're only allowed if it's to acquit. Right? It sounds like the OJ trial. Right? Maybe they were using these laws. It was like unbelievable. The OJ trial according to halacha. That would be a good article. Or a skit. Maybe a Purim. Actually, probably a Purim spiel better than a actual article. I'll give you two more halachos and then we'll try and figure out what is happening here. Number 5. What if you have a unanimous guilty verdict? And as my number, now, what should happen? We should slam the book and kill the person. Everybody agrees that you're guilty. I mean, nobody thinks that you're innocent. Says the Gemara again in Sanhedrin. Sanhedrin shera'u kulam l'chova, right? A Sanhedrin that all wants to have a guilty verdict. Potronoso. We let the guy off. We let him off. Why did we let him off? I have no idea. Well, I have an idea, but it doesn't make any sense. So what's the rationale the Gemara gives? Because if everyone thinks he's guilty, who's going to argue for his acquittal? Right, at this point, if I had any hair, I'd be ripping out of my head. Like, what do you mean they all think he's guilty? And again, I think that where's the justice? Like, that's really the question. If we care about justice, and we certainly care about justice, right? We call it mishpat, right? Where is it? The flip side, of course, the other question, doesn't this person deserve it? Meaning, if you murdered somebody, you deserve to be punished. Why am I looking to acquit a murderer? Last, the last one might actually be the most acceptable in terms of logic. How many members of a court do we need minimum to sentence a person to death? It's a good question. Right? 23. There's a Beis Din of 3, of 23, and then, of course, the Sanhedrin has 70. You need a Beis Din of 23, right? It can't be done with 3 people, and that actually makes sense. Also, get 3 yutzes who want to kill somebody. We can abuse the system good. So we have 23 people. What if it's 12-11? Take a guess, Jeff. 12-11 only works to exonerate. Yeah, of course. Of course.
I like this system.
You like this? Well, it's not something you want to tell Lori. I don't know. Something we should know. I don't know. 12-11 works to acquit. 12-11 does not work to sentence somebody to death. You need at least 13 to 10. So they say you need by 2, but it's impossible to get by 2. I guess it's not if you have a hung one person and you keep adding people, and there's a way maybe to get it. But in general, you need 13 to 10 in order to get a guilty verdict. Right? It is abundantly clear that our halachic system, our system of Beis Din, according to the Gemara, is not interested in justice per se. Rather, they are focused on the acquittal of a person in a capital case. Right? In a money case, all bets are off. And the stakes are certainly lower. I want to give you one more source because I had a new revelation on this source. It does relate to it, and then we'll try and figure out what is happening. That's the last source on your page. Again, it's a very famous source, but hopefully I will add a new wrinkle for you tonight. If you haven't seen it, then the whole thing is new, and that's unbelievable. You get the new and the wrinkle. Okay? Argument in a Mishnah Makos Sanhedrin Ha'reges Echad Bashavua. A Sanhedrin that kills once in 7 years. Here, Shavua is a Shemitah cycle, not a weekly cycle. Nikra Chovlanis. It is a damaging, persecuting Sanhedrin. Rabbi Eliezer ben Azariah Omer Echad Shivim Shana. Rabbi Eliezer ben Azariah says once in 70 years. Okay? Rabbi Tarfon, Rabbi Akiva Omrim, Rabbi Tarfon, Rabbi Akiva say, Ilu hayinu b'Sanhedrin. If we were in the Sanhedrin, lo nerag adam olam, a person would never be killed. We could always finagle a way out. Now, okay, up until now, there is a fascinating question as to whether 1 in 70 years is enough or too much. 1 in 7 years, no good. 1 in 70 years, okay? Is that too much? That's actually, it's not. That's not the question that interests me. It's an interesting question. All right. What's the retort? Or Shimon ben Gamliel has a retort to. Now, let me hold off on 2. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel Omer Af Hein Marbin Shochve Damim BiYisrael. Right? They too are increasing people who murder in Israel. Meaning, if you only kill 1 in 7 years, 1 in 7 years, you never kill, you're increasing murderers in Israel. Right? Now, their concern is not so much the justice system, but the people who are going to get killed. What about them? Who do you think that Rav Shimon Gamliel is responding to? A, B, or C? Again, A is 70 years, B is 70 years, C is no years. Who do you think Rav Shimon ben Gamliel is responding to?
Certainly the last one.
Certainly the last one, but maybe also
Maybe all 3,
Right.
or maybe the second one.
right. It could be all. It could be any of them. And that argument is logical. Arguing against the Jewish society was never that good that we didn't have people who needed to be put to death. Okay. So it could be arguing on C, B, A, all the above. But here's the new wrinkle for this year. What is the only concern that Rav Shimon ben Gamliel has? And let me ask you another question. Is murder the only sin for which there is capital punishment? Right, that's the wrinkle. What other sins carry capital punishment? B'machal Shabbos. Right, if you kindle a light on Shabbos, you get stoned. That's a lot, man. That's harsh, right? That's harsh. What if you are an idolater? Guess what? Gone. All kinds of forms of illicit relationships. You know what happens? Gone. Why is the Mishnah only concerned? Right, this is the wrinkle. I think it's a fact. To me, either I never thought about it before or I forgot it. But either way, I rediscovered it, so it's fun. Why is the Mishnah only concerned about murders? What's the answer to that question? That's a specific question. Ties into everything we said before.
I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, because by not prosecuting, I think this is what Jeff says, but if it's not, you can tell me, but if you like it, just say it's yours, okay? I think here what happens is when there's a murderer, there is a danger to other people. There's a damage that you have to prevent. And therefore, Reb Shimon Gamliel says, well, if you don't kill the murderer, we don't stop the murder. Again, there is no jail in the halachic system. There is just punishment. There's lashes. There is capital punishment. If we don't stop the murderer, other people will get hurt. Blood will be spilled, right? Shofchei damim. Blood will be spilled. What happens if we don't kill the Machalo Shabbos?
Machal Shabbos.
He'll be Machalo Shabbos again. Why isn't Reb Shimon ben Gamliel worried about that? Isn't that a good question? Now, you could make the same case, by the way, with adulterers, because there is a damaged party, although not in the same drastic, irreversible, well, it is irreversible, but end of life sense. But what that tells me is Reb Shimon ben Gamliel seems to agree that we shouldn't kill anybody else. We shouldn't kill the adulterers, and we shouldn't kill the idolaters, and we shouldn't kill the Sabbath desecrators. The only one he's worried about is the one that will kill somebody else. Then he's got to step in and say, no, you can't do it, right? So again, we could have had the shiur without that, but I thought that was really cool, so I threw it in because I never saw it before. He has no issues. Let the Shabbos desecrator live. Let the idolater live. The fornicator, the whatever. Let them all live. We have. It seems like, and I think this is true from everything we have seen. It seems like we have no interest in killing people. We have no interest in capital punishment. And now that I think is the only conclusion that we draw. So that to go back to the beginning, Barry, I think that's the other answer. It's not only a procedural issue, although we can have a discussion about whether they created these procedural issues or they received them by tradition, but that might be a little more technical than we want to get tonight. But that would be a fair question. But I think that the ethos of halacha is that we don't want to kill people. Now we have a problem. Because what does the Torah actually say we should do to these people? Kill them. All right. So now we have a problem where the ideal system, we shouldn't even do quote unquote, the ideal system in the Chumash is that we're supposed to kill people. So there is capital punishment. And yet there is tremendous reticence to actually do it in reality and halacha, even when it's a murderer, right? Even by the murderer, there's a discussion about should we, shouldn't we, maybe we should, maybe we shouldn't. By everybody else, all we're looking to do is get them off. Why that should be? I think there's only one answer. Because, right, to make a humanitarian case for the death penalty is extraordinarily difficult when the Chumash says this is what's supposed to happen. Right? This is what they deserve. This is what's supposed to happen. To then go and say that the halacha is undermining the Torah, I think that's a very dangerous and bad approach. I don't think that's a very healthy halachic or philosophic approach. I've said this many times before, and I'm going to say it again now. I believe that the Torah's system, the system that is developed in the Chumash and is explained and explicated in the Gemara, is not meant to be a practical system. Okay? I can prove that to you, and then I'll come back to our case. I can, okay, hold on to I can go into a room of relatives. It's going to choose women, but why offend the women? So let's choose male relatives. All right? I can go into a room of 10 brothers, and I can tell them, listen, guys, I'm going to kill this person right here. I bring the person in. Let's call the person Ruvain. I have Shimon through, I guess, Yosef, lined up, 10 people watching me do it. I tell him I'm of sound mind. I hate this person. He's a terrible person. He made fun of me, blah, whatever the case is. I take out my gun and I blow his head off. And Reuben's a goner. You know what then? Those 10, and they can be upstanding, fabulous, great Jews. You know what those 10 brothers can do to me?
Nothing.
Zero.
Hear you from Lutheran.
Absolutely nothing. Because they're pasala edus. They're disqualified because they're siblings. It is not a practical system. To kill somebody, you have to go and say, I want you to know that we witnesses are watching you do this, and you're going to die if you do this. And the person has to look at you, look up right, as they're stabbing Reuben and say, I know, I accept, all good, thank you. And then keep going, keep stabbing Reuben until the blood is lost from I keep killing Reuben over and over and over again. Poor Reuben. Right? It's not a system that is meant to be practiced, and therefore the halacha intentionally skews it so that we are acquitting people. Why is that? Because that system is a system that relies heavily on divine intervention, right? And it limits human mistakes, right? In that system, when we are worthy is a good system, right? It is tremendously limiting of human mistakes, right? And that, I guess, would tie into the modern death penalty debate. Nobody's perfect. We make mistakes. A death penalty is irreversible. And therefore, we want to limit human mistake as much as we can. But in order to do that, we have to have a full reliance on HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The society that merits that is indeed a wonderful society. I don't know that we've ever lived in such a society. Now, what is abundantly also clear, right, is that in reality, when there was a murderer running around town, you know what they did to him?
Drop him in the pit.
Or they killed him, they threw him in a pit. There are external, yes, they put him in a pit, they fed him oats, then they gave him water, and his stomach went kaboom, right? Mara says so. Right, meaning you always had to have a way to manage society. There is a tshuva from Rabbi Yehuda. I mentioned this before also, but it's makes the case better than any other. From Rabbi Yehuda, the son of the Rush, they were given autonomy in a lot of European communities. Jews had autonomy to run their affairs, and there was a serial robber who was just going from house to house and stealing stuff. And they brought him to Rabbi Yehuda ben Rush. You know what he did to the guy? They chopped off his hands. It's in a tshuva. I mean, they cut off his hands. Right? Ayin tachat ayin. That's metaphorical, except they whacked his hand off because they had no other way to stop him from stealing. There is, again, I will give this is a second shear. I'll give it to you about 30 seconds right now. There are 4 other options presented since the drushos of the Ran in the 14th century until the 20th century. There are 4 other options of what legal basis and system you may use in order to properly adjudicate cases and make sure that society runs. Because as we've seen here, the whole halacha is skewed to not be effective and to always acquit. Number 1, get in order, right, is that we rely on a system of shoftim as opposed to Beis Din. Shoftim are judges. We have that in the parasha of Shoftim. We might rely on the power of the king, of the melech, right? We might rely on some sort of hefker, Beis Din hefker in a right, non-monetary sense. There's even a suggestion that we go all the way back to the Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach. That is a very contentious suggestion because for reasons that are not relevant right now. But what's one of the 7 Noachai mitzvos? Dinim. Got to set up court systems. I saw an article years ago that argued that we rely on the Noachide law to set up our courts and circumvent the halacha. Right? You can choose any of those, but there is no way that society could function with the Torah's prescribed system. And I think that is why it's so skewed, because that's only in an ideal system, only in an ideal world where HaKadosh Baruch Hu is involved and really involved, which takes a lot more merit than we've seemed to be able to muster as a people for millennia. In such a situation, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will really take care of whoever needs to be taken care of. And in that case, we limit our mistakes to a tremendous extent. Maybe we never put someone to death. Maybe we never convict anybody, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to do it. So that system is a divinely calibrated system. But when we don't merit it, we use one of the other four systems. I think, to me, that's the only way. It's the only way that any of this makes sense. And again, so nobody should call me a kofar or a heretic. Right? The Ran, the great Rebbeinu Nisim, says exactly. I mean, the fact that it's impractical, and he thinks that it is. He thinks it's the judges, but that I can't remember. But he essentially says there's no way to practice halacha. The Ran said that in the 14th century. So I'm just re-quoting that now in the 21st century. With that, I'll take any last questions anybody has.
Rabbi, were there
Yes.
any cases of someone who sat on the court, the Sanhedrin, that personally had an experience with somebody in their family who was killed, or a neighbor, or someone in their synagogue, like,
I mean, you think it affected them, and therefore they turned against capital punishment?
you know, or had to excuse themselves from letting the criminal get off.
I'm not smart enough to know all that in my head by heart. It's a good question.
And I didn't know if there was any.
There might be. I
enlightenment
mean,
about it.
I don't have an encyclopedic knowledge in my head. I wish I did. That I certainly wish I did. If you remind me, I'll look it up. We'll see. We can come back after Shavuos. We can revisit that topic. That's a good question. Anybody else? All right, with that, we wish you all a good night. Everyone's invited next Tuesday night, Sternberger Avenue. We will be learning all night. Please come and join us.